Hey everyone, this is your stimulus check update, second stimulus check update and stimulus package update for Friday, October 23rd. This update is for those of you on SSI, SSDI, Social Security, and VA benefits, and for anyone else wondering about the second stimulus check and the stimulus package negotiations. In this video, I'll be going over the following topics. First of all, the latest in the stimulus talks, including quotes from Nancy Pelosi, Mark Meadows, and a Republican senator who is leery about passing a stimulus bill that is so high. Next, I'm going to be talking about some economic leaders that are calling for more stimulus in order to get the economy back on track. Next, I'm going to be talking about the scenarios for a stimulus check and a stimulus package deal. And last of all, I'm going to be offering some words of encouragement. I want to welcome back those of you that are subscribed members of my channel. Thank you once again for watching and welcome back. And for those of you that haven't subscribed, my name is Justin and I do stimulus check updates. So be sure to subscribe right now and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified each and every time I upload a new video. And if you find this content helpful, be sure to hit the like button so that YouTube will share this video with others like you. So first off, I want to go over some quotes and how these stimulus talks are going. It seems like this is what we go over almost every day, but I think it sounds like there is some progress that's being made, and it does sound like we are getting really close to a deal. First off, I want to talk about what Nancy Pelosi said, and she said a lot of things as she has been kind of at the forefront of these stimulus negotiations. And somebody that I have called the person that holds all of the power in these stimulus negotiations. On MSNBC earlier in the week, Nancy Pelosi said, "I'm pretty happy. I think we have a prospect for an agreement. I do not believe that our timetable has come and gone." Remember that last Sunday, Nancy Pelosi gave a 48-hour deadline in order to get a stimulus package deal done before the November 3rd elections. That deadline passed on Tuesday, but it doesn't sound like that she thinks that the timetable has come and gone. Now, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, one who, if you remember, he is one that used to be part of the main stimulus negotiations along with Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. He is not directly involved in the stimulus negotiations at this point, as it seems like it's only Nancy Pelosi and Steven Mnuchin at this point, but Mark Meadows is still very tied into these stimulus negotiations, so he has a good idea of what is going on. He was on Fox News and made a comment that I thought was very promising when he said, "We do share one goal, and that is hopefully to get some kind of deal in the next 48 hours or so. I can tell you that the negotiations have entered a new phase, which is more on the technical side of trying to get the language right if we can agree upon the numbers." And in my opinion, that's great to hear that the negotiations are moving more to the technical side and actually moving more towards getting the language right. That usually means that they have a deal in principle and they're just trying to finalize the verbiage for that deal. So once they have a deal, they actually have to have it all written up so that they can then send it to the House and the Senate for a vote. And it does sound like they're working on just the language at this point. They still don't have a complete agreement on the numbers, but the fact that they're working on the language is a good sign. As I've brought up before, one of the biggest fears is that even if Nancy Pelosi and the Trump administration can reach a deal, that some of the Republicans in the Senate are not going to agree to a deal. So there are some Republican senators that are going to oppose this. However, as I've said before, we need about 13 Republican senators to go along with the deal, as long as we can get all of the Democrat senators to agree with Nancy Pelosi. That would put us at 60 votes, which is what is needed to pass the next stimulus deal. Former presidential candidate Marco Rubio, who is also a Republican senator in the state of Florida, is one of those senators that's leery about passing a deal that's close to $2 trillion. He was on CNBC's Squawk Box and said this, "No one is going to get everything they want here, and from my perspective, that means the bill on this is probably going to be higher than I want it to be, and I'm very uncomfortable with that." So he is leery of the price tag, as are, I think, many of the senators, probably both on the Democrat and the Republican side. He did continue and said, "I think the price of not doing something is even higher. So as long as it's limited in some way, as long as it's not crazy, yes, I'm willing to be flexible about it because I think it's that important." So I think he realizes there is no way he's going to get exactly what he wants, because nobody is going to get exactly what they want. They're going to have to make a compromise, And in his case, this compromise is spending more money than he thinks we should spend at this point. But he's willing to go along with that as long as it's something that I think President Trump signs off on. So this is great news to hear from somebody that is a little bit worried about the total price tag, but is still willing to go along with a deal. I think the fact is that if President Trump signs off on a deal and his administration with Steven Mnuchin and Mark Meadows and President Trump, they basically say, okay, Pelosi, we have a deal, and they sign off on it, there are going to be enough Republican senators that are going to jump on board and the deal will go through. And President Trump continues to be confident that that is the case as well. He said, quote, "If I had something that would be good, I think I could quickly convince the Republicans to do it." And I think President Trump is right. If he comes to a deal with Nancy Pelosi, there will be at least 13 Republican senators, which is what they would need, to sign off on this deal, and a deal would get done. As you know, the American people are struggling right now. Many of you are struggling right now. I read it in your comments and it breaks my heart. There are so many people that don't have money for food, for housing, and for many other necessities of life. And so these stimulus checks aren't just a frivolous thing for many of you to just go on vacation or do whatever else, but they are to just live on and to actually get some money to help you out during this difficult time. And I think President Trump realizes this, and that's why he is willing to continue to have his administration go to the negotiating table with Nancy Pelosi, despite him disagreeing on a lot of the things. But they are trying to make a compromise so that both sides can agree to it and get some help for you and the rest of the American people. President Trump is not alone in his calls for more stimulus, as there are many economists that are also calling for the same thing. Earlier this week, Lael Brainerd, a Barack Obama appointed economist who now sits on the Federal Reserve of Governors, said, "Too little support would lead to a slower and weaker recovery." And there are a lot of others that are saying this as well. In addition to this, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has previously called for more aid, saying that there is much more risk of economic fallout if we do nothing than there is a risk of causing economic problems if we do too much or if we are providing too much aid. Jerome Powell is one that has been pretty much on board with more stimulus all along. And in addition to Federal Reserve Jerome Powell, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has also been one that has called for more stimulus when he said, "Now is not the time to worry about deficits." So many economists and financial leaders are calling for stimulus, basically saying the economy is in trouble, and by the economy being in trouble, that means that there are American people in trouble. So now I want to go over some of the worst case, best case, and most likely case scenarios for a stimulus negotiation and a stimulus check and a stimulus package deal. First off, I want to talk about the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is Nancy Pelosi and the Trump administration do not reach a deal, and basically they say, okay, we have differences, we can't reconcile, and we are not going to reach a deal at all. That would be a bad scenario, obviously, because that would mean we'd have to wait until either President Trump wins the election or President Trump loses the election, and the new administration would have to make a deal with the House and the Senate. That is not a good scenario, and we do not want that to happen. However, I don't think that is the worst possible scenario. The worst possible scenario is President Trump and his administration agree to a deal with Nancy Pelosi, and it's sent to the Senate, who then rejects it. That would be the very worst possible scenario in my mind, because that would mean that there is no chance of a deal going through until early part of 2021, and maybe not even at all. Those two worst case scenarios I think are not very likely at this point, which is the good news. The best case scenario would mean Nancy Pelosi and the Trump administration agree to something today, and within the next week, both the House and the Senate vote on that deal and pass it within the next week. This scenario, I think, is probably more likely than those previous worst case scenarios, but it's also not super likely. There is still a lot of things to be agreed to and worked out. However, it does sound like they are getting very close to a deal. But that would be the best case scenario, getting a deal done today and passed within the next week. The most likely scenario, the one that I think is most likely, is within the next 2 weeks, they will have a deal done and they will have a stimulus proposal passed in both the House and the Senate and signed by President Trump. This would also most likely mean that stimulus checks would not start going out until after the November election. That's something I think Nancy Pelosi is carefully working on, because she's previously said multiple times that she doesn't want a stimulus check going out with President Trump's name on it. If the election is already over, I think that becomes less of an issue for her. She doesn't care as much if President Trump's name is on a stimulus check if he won re-election or if he lost the re-election. But I think that's the most likely scenario, is that within the next 2 weeks, a deal is reached, signed, and approved by both the House and the Senate, and signed by President Trump, and stimulus checks would go out within a week after that. That's the most likely scenario. I don't think it's going to happen today, but I do think it will happen within the next 2 weeks. I do hope that they can reach a deal soon, and that you guys can start getting your second stimulus check soon. I know that many of you are hurting and struggling and trying to figure out how to just pay for food and pay for your housing. But I also know this: you guys are stronger than you realize, and you will get through this. I think you've gone through difficult times before and you've made it through. And I think this time, although difficult and there are many struggles in your lives, you will make it through. Remember to be grateful for your health, your family, or even just your life. There are good things in your life. And if you focus on those, the bad things become minor. As you look at your life and find those things to be really grateful for, you can also look around for people to help and people to serve. There are people that are even less fortunate than you that could use a helping hand, even just a smile or just something small like that. But as you serve other people, your burdens will become lighter and you will have a lot more joy in your life. Remember to stay positive, stay safe, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you again soon.